because we're already in the engagement. We don't need to keep proving ourselves. I think there might be that underlying thing of, ooh, I have to make sure that I'm providing value at all times. But that doesn't necessarily mean me giving information, me giving advice. It's really creating the space, the environment, the opportunity for people to share their authenticity, whatever the topic.
Welcome to She Coaches Coaches. I'm your host, Candy Motzek, and I'm going to help you find the clarity, confidence, and courage to become the coach that you are meant to be. If you're a new coach, or if you've always wanted to be a life coach, then this is the place for you. We're going to talk all about mindset and strategies and how to, because step by step only works when you have the clarity, courage, and confidence to take action. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of She Coaches Coaches. I am so pleased that you are here with me today, and we're recording this in February of 2025. Lots of things going on in the world right now. But what I'm wanting you to hear as you listen to these episodes is that I'm having some amazing conversations with very interesting, kind, caring people. And I hope that when you tune in, this is that little place for you to sort of maybe turn off that news cycle and realize that there are good people in the world who are having good, constructive conversations, and that you can come here anytime and listen to us. You can listen to my conversation that I'm having today or with some of the other wonderful guests that I'm having this season. So let me introduce my guest today. Her name is Kym Dakin-Neal, and she is a CPQC certified mindset coach, specializing in effective communication and professional presence for over a decade. She works successfully with newly promoted employees, women running for office, entrepreneurs pitching new products, and others. And Kym helps train medical professionals in more productive listening and patient communication in multiple East Coast hospital systems. She's got a background in applied improvisation for adult learning and community health, and she's a sought-after speaker with the Department of Environmental Protection and New England Association for Talent Development and Maine Health. She's twice been featured MEHRC speaker, and Kym has also helped to develop a recently sold bookmarking app called Nugget that eliminates the need to take notes and increase engagement in online meetings. Her book, Head, Heart, and Hands Listening in Coach Practice, was released last year by Routledge Publishers and is a North American Book Awards winner in the nonfiction business leadership category. Kym, welcome to the show. I am so glad that you're here.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here, Candy. And I'm sorry there were so many words in that biography. I think if I'd known you were actually going to read it, I would have curtailed it a bit. But thank you. Thank you.
Okay. I think the place that I stumbled is in the initials, right? There's all these different initials. And I'm like, okay,
Acronyms.
can I read letters? I hope so, right?
Right. Exactly.
So let's start with your journey. How did you get to do what you do? And why does it bring you joy?
Oh, beautiful question. Uh, yeah. How did I get to be a coach? Well, I have been resisting being a coach for quite some time. Um, it seemed, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 years ago, suddenly, like everybody was running to coaching. Like, who's not a coach? There's life coaches and there's team coaches. And I mean, any category you could name, there's a coach. And to me, I just kind of went, I don't think so. Um, But I also noticed along the line that I was actually coaching people, whether I considered myself that or not. I love teaching. I love learning. I'm fascinated by the way we think, how we process our experiences. Um, I was helping, I became a bit of a writing coach for people who wanted to put their own books together. I more or less just called myself a teacher when a really good friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, Rati Gorfine, Creative Calling Coaching, just buttonholed me one day and said, Kym, you've been coaching for almost 9 years now. Maybe it's time to just call yourself a coach. So she's the one who got me into the coaching program that I'm certified in, positive intelligence. And from there, I just decided, okay, I'm going to own this and go with it. And what brings me joy? Uh, I think most coaches' answer to that question falls along the lines of when your client gets those aha moments. And for me, I would say yes, but I also would say it's when suddenly your client is able to act on the advice or the things that we talked about or the discoveries that they've made in their session. And suddenly the world is turned around for them.
Mm,
Um, that's one of the reasons I really enjoy working with people who are newly promoted to positions that, oh, this is very exciting. And suddenly I'm much more visible than I was when I was an IT person or when I was in HR. Um, and now I have to be visible. Ah, and the discomfort of that is a really interesting place to be. Um, I think it was Seth Godin said something interesting like tension and anxiety is what we feel right before we're about to grow. And I
mm,
think that's the place that fascinates me.
mm. Yeah, and that word tension really sounds strong to me. Um, there is a lot to that. This tension just before we do something, this tension in the moment when, you know, a coach holds space where I literally have to close my mouth and put my hand over my mouth so I don't talk to allow them to process, right? Like to allow that creative tension and that processing. Mm. There was something else that you said that I thought was really interesting. It's that you realized that you were already doing coaching, even though you had kind of fought against it or dismissed it or whatever. And honestly, I think coaches are the only profession that I know that I hear this kind of conversation. Like, if you're a therapist, you didn't pretend to not be a therapist. You didn't not, do you know what I mean? You didn't dream of being a therapist and then never follow through on the dream, right? Like, if you're a dentist, have you ever met a dentist who is pretending to not be a dentist, right? So, like, why do coaches have this little existential crisis? I don't know. What do you think?
I think maybe because, at least for a while, it was such a broad term. It was sort of like, just about anything could fit into the coaching category if you were helping somebody. And so I think that was one of the reasons I resisted it. It's general. Um, it's sort of like it, um, I'm trying to find an analogy here, but it almost for a while until people started specializing and understanding that they had to describe what kind of coach they were. A general term that started to feel really vanilla and sort of characterless. And so I think that that might have something to do with it. also the fact that, boom, suddenly, uh, all these accreditation programs popped up, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but there were so many of them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and my inner cynic kind of goes, okay, so this is the flavor of the year, and people are going to teach me how to do it, and I'm already doing it, and so yeah, I kind of was backpedaling there for a bit and kind of watching what sort of development and progress the industry was going to make.
Mm.
But then I had that conversation with my friend, and there's nothing like having a conversation with a friend who's known you for like 30 years. Right. There's
Yeah.
pretty much no hiding from the truth that is obvious to them. It may not be obvious to me, but it was obvious to her. So yeah. Also, it was during the pandemic
Mm.
and all my in-person training work had evaporated. Uh, so I had time, I had space. I could focus on the program. I could really dive deep and mine the value of it. Um, and so I was ready. I,
Right time, right place. And you'd laid the groundwork in sometimes perhaps unknowingly, right?
that's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
really interesting.
I mean, and
Let me just switch topics here with you for a minute because I really liked this question. So, for the listeners, I asked the guests to give me some ideas about interesting questions that they would like to be asked or could respond to. And so, let me just ask you this question because I just think that it's wonderful. What's something about you that no one would ever suspect when they first meet you? I love that question. And I might ask that more than once.
yeah, definitely. Um, I love the question too. Uh, and when I use it in my trainings, I love the look on people's face. It's like, oh, cool, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly I can see just a little splash of who they were when they were kids. So, for me, something that people would not suspect is that a number of years ago on my bucket list was tandem skydiving. So, there's a whole story that I won't go into about my tandem skydiving experience, but I did do it. It was a perfect day. I was hooked up to a very cute Australian guy. This is not something that I would do by myself by any means. I'd be thrown out of a plane and just start pulling things randomly, hoping for the best. So, so, but it was an amazing experience. But that's
Mm.
usually when I tell people that, they're like, what? But yeah, it was
What
fun.
was it about it that made it amazing?
Hmm. I grew up in Colorado. My dad was a rock climbing instructor in the Colorado Mountain Club. And so from the time I was 8 years old, he would take us up and teach us to technically rock climb. So I've never been afraid of heights. And I love to be in places where I get a bird's eye view of things, right? I think there's something really healthy about taking a bird's eye view of one's life, one's experience, when we can and when we remember to do it.
Mm.
And oftentimes I have to tell myself to remember to do it. It's so easy to get caught up in the day to day and the problems we're trying to solve and the fires we're trying to put out. When often, if we can get a bird's eye view, a little perspective, it's really helpful.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Hmm. Let's before we hit record, we talked a little bit about what will we talk about. And I love this idea about talking about trust, building trust in relationships and client relationships specifically, and also stress. What to do with stress? How do you support your clients to manage their stress? And then how do you manage your own stress when life is happening and you want to show up fully present for a client? So, where would you like to take this?
Oh, um, maybe we'll start with the last question or the last part of that question and work our way forward. Um, I know for myself, and I'm sure your listeners who are coaches have experienced the same thing, that the level of stress that people are bringing into our sessions um, has amplified. And oftentimes I can struggle to keep us focused and to clarify the delineation between coaching and therapy, because sometimes one can bleed into the other. And so I found ways to gently remind them that I have resources that I can refer them to if they're struggling in ways that I consider to be the part of a therapist, because I am focused on helping build momentum towards stated goals, helping build and tease out from my clients strategies and to build accountability into that process. Um, so once I can clarify that and once I can be heard in that regard, usually people can take a deep breath, which we do as well. I don't know if you know I'm sure everybody's got their breathing techniques, but one that's quick and that's my personal favorite, and you don't have to gain a lot of attention doing it, is the double inhale. So I'll teach people to breathe in and then breathe in again and then let it all go. I find myself doing this multiple times during a day, given what's going on in our world, um, and given what's going on in my life and the life of my clients. Uh, and once we can do something simple like that, tune in to our breathing, where we're breathing, um, how we're breathing, I can usually get them to step down from a place of anxiety. So there's that. There's also asking at the beginning of a session, name three things right now that you're particularly grateful for.
Hmm. Can I just
When
interrupt? Can I just interrupt you here? And I don't want to forget about this part. I just want to reflect something else back to you. And for those of you who are listening, go and look at the YouTube, because here's what happened. The minute that Kym started answering that question, she mirrored lower stress. And so she created that environment where she was doing it within herself, and you could see her slowing down, her voice intentionally slowing down, her breathing intentionally slowing down. So she managed herself first, and then that created the space for a client to mirror that. There's a term, coach goes first, right? And so there's an example of you, coach goes first, coach does it, and almost unconsciously, the client will also follow. So, right? So
mirror
continue
neuron,
along. Sorry to interrupt, but that was really important. I'm watching and I'm like, it's there. I see it. It's happening. Right.
I'm really glad you highlighted that. That's an example of mirror neurons, right? Yes. I do it first, so you can do it. Um, and yeah, I'm certain there are coaches out there who understand that viscerally and utilize it all
Totally.
the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
The other thing is power of gratitude. Um, I think it's been scientifically proven that if you focus on something you're grateful for, there's a reduction in anxiety. This is a technique that I've started implementing with my presentation clients. I'm working with a group of electrical engineers who have to give 5-minute presentations annually. And apparently they struggle so much and are so terrified that after a couple of years of wading through the agony, they finally decided to hire somebody. And so that's one of the first things we're going to do is get in touch with what we're grateful for. I'm grateful to be able to give this presentation. I'm grateful to have this kind of knowledge that I can impart to other people who are going to listen to me. So those kinds of things. Um, I think the power of gratitude is one that is much more powerful than people realize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, where we place our attention makes everything different, right? And so that conscious shift to look for that thing that we're grateful for, or in your case, what you were describing, three things that they're grateful for, and to get into the detail of it too, right? Like that really makes it real.
That's
You
right.
know, so, for those electrical engineers, grateful to be able to give this presentation, grateful to, have the technology where I can actually stand up here and be heard, like to find that detail in it. And then we
Right.
get out of our own heads and get
That's
into
right.
that. Yeah, get into that space of looking outside of ourselves, right?
Yeah. Because it's
Cool.
easy to name, oh, I'm grateful for my spouse. I'm grateful for my family. So, no, let's go into this situation, little granular.
Yeah. What happens when you consciously build trust within your coaching calls?
Um, well, again, I'm sure your listeners have experienced uh, what it's like when your client finally reveals some some things that are going on with them emotionally. I've got several clients who are highly skilled uh, data um, geeks, and they have been promoted to positions in marketing where they are leading teams. And this has been a bit of a challenge to build some trust because I do not have a technical background. I'm not a data geek. So I come from a very different end of the knowledge spectrum. So I think the assumption going in, at least at the top, was that how can this person possibly have anything to offer me? I was hired by the company. Um, so to exhibit some patience um, and to understand that the process may take some time, but that it's all about asking questions and really listening for the answers. Um, and last year, I think it was last year, maybe it was before, uh, working with a particular client in this architecture firm, I discovered the power of how and what questions, along with to what extent does that particular interaction affect you? And to get them into a certain place where they can safely talk about and think about what's going on emotionally and how it's impacting their productivity. Once once they can trust me enough to get into that place, then the information starts to flow. But it can take some time to get there. I also learned that with people who are number crunchers and data geeks, it really helps to have the visuals, the charts, the percentages, um, regular surveys. You were feeling this way 3 months ago. What are you feeling now? Likert scales, how is this impacting you? How is your team leadership being impacting your team? those kinds of questions. Uh, I think there is an assumption that underlies a big part of our economic system that people who have a handle and a grasp of numbers and data, that's all they need. And I think coaches know clearly that that is a very damaging and limited perception. So the more we ourselves can find a way to make the wisdom of what we bring into the room tangible for them, uh, I think the better. And what
Mm.
I've discovered is the power of visuals, the powers of charts and graphs, uh, and numeric um, assessments. Speaks their language.
I mean, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Right.
It's like you have a client who is a native English speaker, and yet their work environment is in Spain. And it's like there's a different language. So, how do you help them translate so
Yeah.
that they can function?
Right.
And the other thing that I was thinking, Kym, is what a shame it is that we've got some brilliant data folks who then are basically set up to fail because they're taken out of the area, the milieu where they're strong, and because they're doing a great job, and then they're put into this other area where now they have to manage people and teams and make presentations for a new continuous improvement initiative, right? And so it's like we need to support these people to actually be able to thrive in this other environment as well, right?
That's right.
And that's a great place for coaches to show up,
Totally.
and to be that translator. We speak Spanish and we speak English,
That's
and
right.
we can, sort of help in that translation. Remember those old dictionaries where you used to have French English dictionaries, and you would, look for the word, and then you'd see the translation, and it's kind of
Yes.
the same thing, right?
Same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Translation is exactly. And I'll be honest, I was very intimidated at first. Um, somebody who has this skill set, I'm kind of in awe. Um,
Yeah.
I could really use it myself, but I have no left brain left, so I do the best I can with what I have. Um, but yeah, uh, after a while, I I could find my way. But it wasn't about me putting myself larger into the space. It was really about asking the questions that would stop and make them think a little bit. It's like, oh, right. I could tell when they'd never thought about the question I was asking, but they were intrigued by it nonetheless. That's
Mm,
a really juicy place to be.
yeah. I imagine that in these coaching sessions, there's a lot of quiet.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. And when I was just starting out, I used to think, oh, right, how am I going to fill this? But I learned pretty early on that, as you just demonstrated at the start of our talk, if I could close my mouth, take a deep breath, hold my tongue, something really interesting can come forward.
Mm, yeah.
Um, and I think that once people can become a little more comfortable with silences, there's a lot for both parties of the interaction to gain. It's like that's a place where you can temper your impulse to fill the silence and calm down and take in what you're seeing. Take in the person's total countenance. Watch their face as they think about what was just said. Um, Pick up specific information about their body language and what's already come into play. Um, I try to build silence now anytime I have a speaking engagement because it's an opportunity for listeners to process what you just said. We are so used to people blithering at us nonstop in this culture that it's a relief to have someone state something or ask something and then let silence fall.
Yeah, I can really feel that. And, in the speaking for sure, but I'm still stuck in the coaching conversation. So there's this place where both come together, right? The listening, the curiosity, the trust building, and the space holding, and all of that dovetails nicely in with the stress management.
Yes.
So perhaps even just the having that coaching conversation, sure, you teach a technique that then they mirror your energy, and then you leave plenty of space, and they can come out of that one coaching conversation completely transformed in how they are,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. Yes.
Hmm.
Ideally, it can work that way.
Yeah. And I don't think, I know this sounds, maybe it doesn't sound quite right. I'm at a loss for words. I don't think that it's that difficult. No,
Hmm.
I don't think that it's that complicated. It can be difficult because we're used to filling the space. We're wanting to make sure that our clients get value. We want to allow them to grow, but we're not sure necessarily if we're hitting the mark. Hmm.
Yes.
It's almost a completely different kind of coaching methodology. Ask
Mm.
one question and be quiet.
Quiet. That's right.
And
Because
don't ask another for 15 minutes.
that's right. Because we're already in the engagement. We don't need to keep proving ourselves. I think there might be that underlying thing of, ooh, I have to make sure that I'm providing value at all times. But that doesn't necessarily mean me giving information, me giving advice. I mean, advice is antithetical to good coaching, as we know now. It's really creating the space, the environment, uh, the opportunity for people to share their authenticity, whatever the topic.
And whatever their current experiences of it as well.
Right.
Coaches are usually pretty tuned in emotionally and caring people. And we get to allow others to grow at their own pace. I'm thinking of the data people, right? They have a particular way of processing their lives. And it may not be my interpretation of the most fulfilling life, but they're pretty happy. So let's encourage them and be respectful that this is their way, right?
That's right. Yep.
Can I
Absolutely.
ask you how, just what we've spoken about, how this comes through in your book? Let's talk just a little bit about your book.
Yeah. Um, well, uh, I was contracted with the Department of Environmental Protection for a series of communication trainings. Field operators had to go in and have one-on-one conversations with landowners who were in violation of some statute. So the emotional tenor was not friendly. Um, Sometimes it included big dogs. Sometimes it included big guns. I mean, it was like, eek. So they wanted me to teach these field operators how to communicate with these landowners so that they could have productive conversations. But in talking to the field operators, I came to understand that they looked at their value again as providing information and data. And in these conversations, they were looking for opportunities to give the landowner more information. Well, now we're pretty clear that more information doesn't change minds or behavior. So I needed to teach them to listen for something else. I needed to build the capacity to listen for creating alliance, for positioning oneself as a field operator, as an ally to the dream that the landowner is trying to build. Why does he want to fill in the wetlands? He wants to create a playground so his grandkids will come and visit him more often. How can you position yourself as an ally in that dream? That becomes the question. That becomes what to listen for. That frames the conversation. And those are completely different questions going in. Once that landowner gets wind that you probably have valuable information that could be utilized in the service of building his dream, he's going to start to pay attention to you, but only if you've built trust to that point. So I started getting curious. What other professions teach people, consciously or unconsciously, what to listen for and what to ignore? Back to our data geeks and our technicians, right? They are listening for numbers, for data, for what's already been proven, and can be quantified. This is primary head listening, right? You're focused on what's already been proven in the past. Heart listening is what the field operators needed to employ. How can you build alliance? What's the relationship here? Let's tune into the unspoken communication, right? Body language, facial expressions. Heart listening is focused on what's happening in the present time between you and me. Hands listening. Hands listening is kind of a combination of head facts and figures and hands heart listening so that, heart listening so that hands can provide problem solving possibilities. Hands listening can make creative use of both head and heart listening. Head, heart, and hands listening is not something I invented. It's deeply ingrained in Waldorf education for early childhood. I could find nowhere in my research where that particular framework was being applied to adult listening.
Oh,
So that's when I started to get curious. And I started getting curious about my own listening. And it's funny the assumptions that we bring about our own ability to listen, even as coaches, right? So I assumed that I was a pretty good heart listener. I have lots of empathy. I can read facial expression, body language. I can tune into who I'm talking to. But my teenage daughter at the time was going through a classic sucky adolescence, right? Every night we're on the back porch with a box of Kleenex. It was awful. This happened, crying. And I was good for maybe a week of this when I'm starting to ask, well, what are we going to do about it? Whereupon she just turns to me and goes, Mom, I just need you to listen. And oh, okay. And turns out my husband, who has greater capacity for head listening than do I, had the ability to just hand her a Kleenex and say, that sucks, like ad nauseum for weeks on end. And that taught me that sort of level of impatience, that question, what are we going to do about it, is endemic to hands listening.
Mm.
Um, and when I took my own assessment that I created in the book, um, turns out I'm a primary hands listener and secondary heart listener, which was a bit of a surprise. Part of the other piece that I felt needed to be in the book was how our listening capacity reinforces our biases, either conscious or unconscious. What are we tuning into and retaining that solidifies our own point of view? What are we ignoring that does not? So
Big lessons
I
there.
had a lot of fun putting this book together. I know, writers who struggle with writer's block and, oh, what am I going to do? I worked with a fabulous editor at Routledge who encouraged me to put really useful exercises and activities at the end of each and every chapter, which I did. Um, when my book proposal finally got accepted, they said, "Oh, by the way, your book needs to be three times as long to meet our minimum." I was like, "Oh, I thought I already said what I had to say," but it turns out I didn't, and that the editor, Heather Evans, is her name. She is an independent now, uh, but she helped me enormously, and I had a lot of fun with the stories that I put into the book. They're all true, uh, without naming names. Um, I had a really good time.
Mm.
And
Love that.
the other thing I will say, one last thing about the book. I was under the belief that I had to be an expert in order to write a book. I struggled with that, and I know a lot of people do. But I finally figured out that I don't really need to be an expert. What I need to be is an informed guide. What I need to do is be a fellow explorer on the trail through the jungle who knows how to ask questions and keeps my curiosity alive. Once I could come to that place and be in that position, I let go of my need to be a so called expert.
Love that, Kym. Informed guide. That is really powerful. Wow, we've covered a lot today. Yeah, I've enjoyed our conversation.
Oh,
Can you tell
Candy,
people?
you're a terrific host. I
Oh,
just want to
thank you.
say that. I've listened to quite a few of your episodes and I was so excited to do this today because
I'm so
you
glad.
truly shine.
Thank you. I really accept that compliment.
Mhm.
I appreciate it. Can you tell listeners how to get your book, how to find you on the interwebs, all of those things?
Yeah.
I think there's a
Uh,
really important message here for them.
I welcome traffic on my website, kymdakin.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. The name of my business is Voice into Learning. Uh, and I'm on Blue Sky. So, and you can, if you're interested in the book, it's on Amazon. It's also on audio. I got to record the audio last summer. A whole story around that I won't go into, but that was a pleasurable experience. So that's available too.
Nice. I'll put all those links in the episode notes. Thank you
Super.
so much for spending time with me. I learned a lot. You reminded me of a lot, and I really enjoyed our conversation.
Same. This was delightful, Candy. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, everyone, that is the episode for this week. You've got lots of things to practice from this episode. I would highly encourage you to consider how you interact with your clients, how you interact with yourself, and all of the other people in your life. Where could you start to make a change in how you listen and how you show up for people? Thanks so much for joining me again this week, and we'll talk to you again next week. Hey, it's Candy, and I am so glad you're here. Thanks again for tuning in and listening to this episode. Now, before you go, don't forget to take my How to Find Your Best Coaching Niche quiz. You can find it at coachnichequiz.com. That's coachnichequiz.com. Talk to you soon. Thanks again for listening today. Please hop on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. Also, I would love to hear from you. Did something that I say resonate? What else would you like to learn about? Click the link in the player and leave a comment on the post. This is going to give me great ideas for future episodes so I can help you best. Join me again next week for more coaching, support, and teaching to help you become the confident coach you are meant to be.